Wow, fewer than...
I was going to say fewer than I expected. You're surprised, Cathy. Why?
Well, I think the headlines are everywhere. We're in an AI bubble. I actually tend to agree with some of the people who kept their hands down. I think it's hard to say that AI is in a bubble across the board. Certainly for some companies and some pockets of AI, valuations have far outstripped any sort of fundamental, but we have to remember, we don't know what the demand for these AI tools look like. There's two big differences. The growth curves that we're seeing now far outstrip the growth curves of companies we've ever seen before. And I'd love to hear Steve's perspective on this. But number two is the TAM, the total addressable market. I don't think we have a good sense around how big some of these companies can ultimately become. And in hindsight, it's so easy to say, oh, you know, XYZ paid so much for that company. But then when you're right, when they're right, people tend to forget about that was spicy at the time.
Steve, were you surprised?
No, I mean, I actually agree. I think it is a bubble, but bubbles are good for innovation. I think bubbles popping are bad, right? And so bubbles bursting and all of that. So you need a bubble. You need a bubble in technology and startups and venture capital to not only attract the world's best talent to work on a certain set of problems, but you also need the capital to fund them. And you don't have that focused concentration of talent and capital without what we would call a bubble. So bubble is a finance term that finance people use, but what we would say, it's a new technology wave, and every 5, 6, 7 years, there's a new technology wave that captures everyone's attention, and you'll see it. All the big tech companies lose people that they're starting companies, and as an early stage investor, we love that. We love to see the top talent. That's a good signal, right? That's not a counter signal, that's a good signal. That's a signal that says this is a real technology wave when the best and brightest PhDs, engineers, founders leave cushy jobs at Google and Meta and Uber, and they want to go start companies. And so, you know, the AI wave or the AI bubble, depending upon where you come from in tech or finance, is a good thing. You know, I think bubbles bursting are obviously bad because that means that, you know, the blast radius on that includes everyone.
That's exactly the thing that I'm wondering about.
But we actually, by the way, first, if we keep, markets are perceptions, right? Markets are a set of perceptions that are dynamic. So as long as we keep talking about a bubble, and Fortune and other magazines and publications keep talking about the bubble, it's good. Markets will release pressure and take air out of that bubble. They'll take money off the table, and this ebb and flow is actually a healthy thing. That's what we want to see, right? Just like Bill Gurley doesn't like IPOs that pop, we don't like bubbles that pop, right? And so the idea here is that I think what you're trying to get at is whether or not there's foundationally core economic value being created for all of this capital and all of this talent movement. And what I would say today as an early stage investor is that absolutely there is a ton of commercialization now happening with AI. So where do you get that? You see that in enterprise. You're starting to see it in consumer. You're starting to see it already. I would say actually most pronounced way would be in developer tools. So look at code gen, look at how people create apps, everything from text-based code generators, looking at generative media, looking at people creating advertising and videos through generative video models and generative image models. Look at, we have a company, Play AI, that got acquired by Meta Superintelligence. Their speech models are already inside of Instagram being used by Meta. And so this is, you know, they acquired them 6 months ago.
So that's a real case with an incumbent. Cathy, where are you seeing value definitely be created, beyond a shadow of a doubt?
The key things that I look for across any type of company, not just AI company, is number one, is this a feature or is this actually a workflow? Let's get real. AI is no longer a differentiator. Actually, I think we're entering into the era where it's no longer AI for X, AI for sales, AI for customer support. In the future, it's just going to be a customer support workflow tool, and every company will be powered by AI. The key difference is companies that are able to actually embed and fully overtake an existing workflow while having significant and building significant switching costs. The second thing I look for is distribution built in, right? What does that mean? So is a tool integrated in usability? Is it integrated in all the other solutions that it needs to be in order for the workflow to be fully functional? People don't want to learn yet another tool. They want to work where they're already working and have almost superpowers to let them work faster. And the third thing that I look for is, do these companies get stronger over time, right? People call this the compounding durability. So with every new user, does the solution get better? Does it get cheaper? Does it get faster? And when you have all three, that's something that I'm really looking for. And where I'm seeing that today, by the way, Allie, to answer your question directly, is at the application layer, and particularly around vertical AI.
I was going to say, the application layer gets a lot of love. Who makes it in the end? Application layer companies, model companies, both? How does this all shake out?
Well, with any sort of new, a true technology wave that's very differentiated, the whole stack changes, right? Not just one layer, horizontal layer in it. And so right now, you're seeing it all the way from chips, all the way up through application layer. But we're still in the early phase where we're still building out, we're designing and building out that entire new stack. So what that means is that we have chips now, and we have more chip companies, right? So it's starting to flush out. Then we have neoclouds competing with hyperscalers, which is really interesting, and it creates, you'd think that there would be massive amounts of price pressure, right? If there's that many new entrants in AI compute. But guess what? The neoclouds, they have 60-70% gross margins. The hyperscalers have 50 to 70% gross margins, depending upon which one. So look, if the margins are still high, that means that in aggregate, they have pricing power on all of the application layer companies. And so I think what you're going to continue to see is that we're innovating and investing largely from the bottom up, because it's a new wave. And AI compute is so critical to this wave. I mean, it's a super wave, right? I don't want to call it tsunami because it has a negative connotation. But it's a super wave because it really affects every industry, every global market. The application layer, as an early stage investor, we're looking probably about half at specialized frontier models and AI infra.
Specialized specifically, not generalist.
We can talk about that. And the application layer, we're also investing. But we know that anything in the application layer, it's art and science. And it's a lot of hard work and luck. So the risk is much higher, I think, on the application layer. If you get it right, it's incredible. Everyone will know your brand. Everyone will be using your products, right? Every industry. But there's a lot of risk there because the substrate, the underlying layers are still being worked out. So we're like in robotics, we're at sort of the GPT 3.5 phase of robotics where everyone's using these basic VLMs and VLAs and motion planning. And that's all going to get 10 times, 100 times better. So a whole bunch of robotic startups that we're building on top of these primitive models are going to have a lot of heartbreak when the models improve and they've built for something sort of in the past. And so, and this happened to application layer and consumer device startups 2 years ago in the LLM-based era, right? And so I think that if you look at what's happening right now, even at an early stage fund, we are looking at how do we invest in companies accelerating and modernizing the AI infra stack, so that GPU as a service, GPU marketplaces, chips, frontier models that are specialized, that perform a very deterministic, high-quality outcome, no hallucinations. You don't have to worry about your regulated critical industry product getting in trouble with bad information being output.
Which makes a big
healthcare, fintech. Think about those industries.
Where it makes a big difference. Cathy.
I would love to chime in. I'm spending most of my time on the application layer right now. I would agree with Steve that it's tricky, right? Things are changing so quickly, but I do think there's a pocket within the application layer where it's very, very interesting right now. I tend to think about it as a 2x2, right? On one axis, you have either PLG or kind of core enterprise, and the other axis is it a feature or a workflow? When you go to the quadrant that is enterprise and it's a workflow, that's where we see real stickiness happening, right? Because data has a center of gravity. think about selling into a large company, Fortune 500. Being able to collect all their data, being able to understand their business processes and convert that into your product, that is something that is very, very difficult to rip out once you get there. And when you think about prior technological waves, people always say, oh yeah, the first wave of companies never make it, right? It's like the MySpace fallacy. But if you look at the enterprise, okay, what was the first cloud HR company? It was Workday. What was the first cloud CRM? It was Salesforce.
First mover advantage is actually real.
Yep, and they're still around.
We have to go to the audience for questions. We have mic runners. If you could give me your name and company. Any questions for Cathy and Steve? I have more.
Can I?
Yeah, please, go ahead.
So I would actually say, I agree with Cathy on this, that it's a mixed bag, right? There's first movers, second movers, right, that win. I don't know if there's a rule or on one or the other. I think it's mixed. But I think when I look at enterprise, I look at that not as application layer only, but my framework on that is that whether it's enterprise for productivity software of some sort, business productivity, some function, or generative media, it's actually a vertical alignment, right? So the models that you use, you may post-train your own models. You may use third-party models. You may pre-train your own models. Who knows? But there's a mix of that happening, and then you have to build your own developer tooling and your infra in a particular way, and then your application that faces the customer and the customer uses is also customized. So I look at things like enterprise, generative media, robotics as vertical columns within this technical stack.
Now you have quite a spicy prediction, since we're getting towards the last 90 seconds here. You have quite a spicy prediction about the future of robotics, Steve, don't you?
Well, I think I said it earlier, which is robotics is difficult. So what's the who here has ridden a Waymo or a Cruise or anything like that? Okay.
We're in San Francisco.
So good, majority of the crowd, good crowd. So that is the #1 modern state-of-the-art robot that everyone is using today, right? It's a Tesla FSD, it's a Waymo, it's a Zoox or a Cruise, rest in peace. Zoox is out there, Neuro is out there, and they'll be powering Uber's own branded self-driving fleet later next year. So we're all going to be using robots on a daily basis. Our kids are going to be riding in robots on a daily basis. That area is super exciting, but think about all of the startups building humanoids, think about all the arm robotics for industrials. You're either faced with a huge enterprise sales cycle that's within industrial. I can't think of anything more painful for a startup than that. Maybe second to that is to try to prove that a humanoid won't fall down, won't screw up, won't have bugs, and it's going to move around in your office or household or on the street even. So there are long development cycles to get society ready, governments ready, your home ready, your family ready, your friends ready. So think about that, and that is a deep tech problem that is going to, you're going to see a lot of consumer robotics companies fall by the wayside, get sold and shut down because of, one, what we talked about before, the underlying models need to improve to help them, and then the deployment and adoption cycle is going to be really long.
We're at time, but Cathy, last word, one sentence prediction for 2026.
AI is going to be even more difficult to go into the enterprise. You think that model's getting better accuracy, people want to use more AI, but I think for the reasons Steve mentioned, it's actually going to be harder because people are going to be more focused on trust and visibility, and we haven't really solved that problem yet.
We'll leave it there. Thank you so much, Cathy, Steve.
Thank you.